That's enough of that. It's a pretty good song though, because it's gonna be a pretty good year. Where are we at? Okay, so just starting off. Yeah, this is concerning. Starting Civil War II over a state's right to drown children in a river with razor wire. Yeah, sounds fantastic. That's definitely worth going to bat for. You bunch of morons. I don't know how to put that lightly, but yeah, I mean, we could be going to bat for like, you know, I don't know, maybe like actual rights or like, you know, the removing your ability to vote or like you no longer can freely move within the state or, you know, crazy stuff like that. But no, it's over whether or not we can drown children in a river that's on the southern border. That's really what it breaks down to. Greg Abbott really wants to get that done. That seems to be like one of his main goals as a governor. So, yeah, I mean, kudos to him if that's the tree he wants to fall under again, or that, yeah. Then you know, so be it. But as a Texan, I feel like there's a lot of work that we got to do. There's a lot that we could be doing and we should be doing. I think we're doing a great job as far as certain protests go. Things like this. Bit clear, isn't it? Bit clear, isn't it, mate? Reply to particles. Yeah, I hope so. I don't know. Maybe you can hear me do that more. The snorting thing. But yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so these are the parent states that have signed up to back us. When I say us, okay, Texas, born in Texas, native Texan, lived here my entire life. It's a shame. It's a damn shame as to what people are trying to make this place into. The Republican Party has certainly done a number on Texas, but here, let's check out PBS NewsHour's coverage of
A
it.
standoff between Federal Border Patrol and Texas.
That's a little low. Let me crank that up a little bit.
State officials is intensifying following a Supreme Court ruling in favor of the Biden administration.
There we go.
Laura Barone-Lopez has more.
Earlier this week, the Supreme Court said U.S. Border Patrol agents could remove razor wire that the state put in place along the Rio Grande River. The Homeland Security Department is demanding immediate access to a section of the border being blocked with razor wire and fencing. But Texas Governor Greg Abbott is doubling down, blocking the agents from entering the area and saying Texas's constitutional authority is, quote, the supreme law of the land and supersedes any federal statutes to the contrary. Joining me to discuss this further is Stephen Vladeck, a professor at the University of Texas School of Law. Professor Vladeck, thanks so much for joining. Republican Governor Abbott is saying Texas is going to hold the line, and it's unclear when or if this razor wire is going to be removed. Who ultimately has the authority over the border here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear under the Constitution, under our precedents, that immigration policy control of the border really is ultimately in the federal government's purview. But Laura, I think it's just as clear that Governor Abbott wants this confrontation and that he's willing to take this battle all the way back to the Supreme Court before he's going to stand down.
And Governor
What do you mean back? They already gave him a ruling. Like, what is this back and forth? Then he would just ignore that too.
Abbott is claiming that he has this authority under the U.S. Constitution because the federal government isn't protecting Texas against a, quote, invasion. That's the way he's been describing it. Is this a reasonable interpretation of the Constitution?
No, and in two different respects. I mean, the first is that obviously, an influx of asylum seekers, however many we're talking about, is not what the founders had in mind when they used the word invasion. But Laura, second,
Right.
even if you're not persuaded by that, the clause Governor Abbott's relying on in Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution was dealing with the specific scenario of the ability of states to respond to invasions until federal authorities were able to respond. This is a time in American history when the federal military was small, it was very spread out, it took weeks to travel, Congress was usually out of session. There's no support in our history, there's no support in founding era materials for the idea that states can decide for themselves that they're under invasion.
Also, it was an invasion of an actual army, not of just people trying to come here to do some jobs, to do work. That does not define an invasion.
And even if the federal government disagrees, that somehow it's the state's determination that would control.
Recently, 3 migrants drowned in the Rio Grande in this section that Border Patrol agents have been trying to access. And all this comes as a number of Republican governors still...
And they are not the first 3. There have been several children that have drowned previous to that. And policy is to be just sit there and stare at them.
They'll say that they support Texas, that they stand by Texas. What are the larger implications of this standoff between Texas and the federal government?
I mean, the larger implications are pretty staggering. It's not just the specter of a physical confrontation between federal and Texas officials along the border in Eagle Pass. It's also basically a relitigation of a debate that we had in American law for the first 70 years of this country about the ability of states to effectively nullify those federal laws that they disagreed with, that they thought were unconstitutional. For better or for worse in our constitutional system, federal law supersedes state law, even when we don't like how the federal government is or is not enforcing those federal laws. The remedies for those disagreements are not to allow every state to go out on their own and to have their own policies. The remedies, if you really have a problem with the policies, is to change the people who are making them. Otherwise, it's a federal system, Laura, in name only.
And Governor Abbott also claims that the federal government...
So that's what he's trying to prove, is that it's a federal system in name only, and any state can do whatever they want to do, which is obviously not the case in the United States. We're playing stupid games, is really what we're doing here.
Government has, quote, broken the compact with states. What do you think he means?
Like, if Fed doesn't put the hammer down, then it's going to be, anybody's game as to what any state's going to want to do from here on out.
By that, and have states in the past used that language to justify defying the federal government?
Yeah, I mean, the compact theory of the Constitution is a pretty outlier view, especially these days, about the way the Constitution was formed. The basic premise is that the federal government, the constitutional system we have, was formed by the states, and therefore the states can control its terms. That was the argument on which the southern states predicated secession and helped to precipitate the Civil War. There's a reason why we tend not to hear that much of it these days. Again, I mean, I think there's a lot of folks who are going to have strong views about whether the Biden administration is or isn't doing what's best for the country at the border. But the way to air those disagreements is through the federal electoral process. In a world in which states can follow this version of the compact theory as a justification for interfering with federal authority, what's to stop California from doing that to the next Republican president? What's to stop Vermont from doing that to the next Republican president? And then we're talking about a system in which the states have all the power and the federal government is basically impotent to do anything.
Professor Stephen Bladdock of the University of Texas, thank you for your time.
Hey man, every empire falls, right? So it is what it is. But yeah, I really think as far as what's happening right now, it's always been just trying to stir shit up. That's always been Abbott's angle. He obviously wants to see little kids drowning in the river. It's more of the same. This crazy shit over here, this rhetoric, all these states saying that they're gonna send their armies and whatnot, their national militias or whatever. It's just a bunch of BS. It's all politics. They're ramping up to to show what Biden can and can't do in his final year. That's really what it is. This year, throughout the year to November, we're just going to see absolutely crazy shit like this. As far as there being like a civil war in the streets between the federal military, which is the U.S. military, I can guarantee you the boys that are coming from Pennsylvania and New York and Maine, they probably would put some stamps on their helmets for however many Texas National Guard that they got, if that's what it really broke down to. Because the U.S. military, you have all the technology. Yeah, Texas, we have a few things here and there, but it's it's a non-existent fight. Republicans can't make up their mind. One minute they want to decentralize the country, the next they want militant theocracy. Exactly, with the dash of fascism. Right. Yeah, it's just stupid games that they're playing.
Now to a view of this crisis from the top levels of the Mexican government. A short time ago, I spoke with Mexico's Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Alicia Bárcena. Just last week, she met with
I want to see what
Blinken here in Washington.
What they have to say about this in Mexico.
But fundamentally
I don't know if I'm gonna watch this whole
video. Since the
video.
holidays, there's been a drop in migrant encounters at the U.S. border, which the Biden administration credits to more aggressive.
But yeah, to that point, Republicans always want less government involved until they want all government involved, right?
Enforcement by Mexico. I began by asking Secretary Bárcena what Mexico has done differently.
In the case of U.S. and Mexico, it's no longer Mexicans going to the U.S. that much. We are having much more people coming from Guatemala, Venezuela, and agreed that we were going to, in a certain way, do some repatriation back to their countries of origin. So that's number one measure we have been doing, and that has worked quite well. Secondly, is that we have done much more law enforcement and to bring down the pressure in the border in the north. And we are bringing people from the north to the southern part of Mexico. And from there, we are looking for, in some cases, some migrants cannot be repatriated, such as the Haitians, for example. So we help them to find some jobs in our own country. Then the third one is we are focusing on the structural causes of migration, which means that we are going to these countries.
So one thing about the structural causes of migration, first of all, you'd have to go back to the Monroe Doctrine, the coups and the destabilizations that the United States has caused in a lot of countries in South America and Central America. These people aren't necessarily just moving to the United States because it's a good time. There's a lot of shit that's been going on in their countries for quite a long time to make them move. And it sucks that we have Mexico as the buffer zone where there are thousands of people literally sitting along the border every day in camps that have been created, that they've created because they have no other option. We're stuffing them at the border and they can't come across.
Some development packages to the people to in a certain way to incentivize them to stay back in their countries of origin.
As part of your enforcement efforts, I know in the past Mexico has relied heavily on your armed forces and on the National Guard, and there's been some studies that have shown that reliance has led to a number of abuses, sexual abuse and extortion along the way, particularly for women and migrants of African descent. I have to tell you, from the migrants I've met recently arriving in the U.S., most of them have said the most difficult part of the journey is coming through Mexico because of that abuse. How is your government planning to stop that?
You see, the thing is that this is something that we are very worried about, because precisely we are trying to seek the possibility of people staying in the southern part of Mexico, because the travel is dangerous. I think the smugglers...
The southern parts of Mexico are dangerous, man. What are you talking about?
Not only from Mexico, this starts from the Darien in Panama. So one of the things we are aiming at is to go together to El Darien, together with the U.S., Colombia, Panama, and all the countries, to see if we can stop the human trafficking. Because
Madam Secretary, if I may, what I've heard from these migrants, though, is not that the Darien Gap was difficult, it's that Mexican officials, Mexican authorities, are the ones abusing and extorting them.
Well, sometimes, we have to stop them from getting to the border, that's true. So one of the things we have to realize is these people are looking to go to the U.S. That's what they want. And if we are going to try, and these people are basically illegal immigrants, so we are in certain way, we are doing a lot of efforts to accompany the guards, the military, and
this lady?
as you say, the law enforcement officials, to be accompanied by human rights officials. We are working on that, and also to provide them with social services on their way and humanitarian. We have 52 shelters, and we have 100 shelters for children and that are unaccompanied or children on their own. So what we are working on is whenever a migrant comes in and transits in our country, if they are children or unaccompanied children, we send them to these shelters immediately, to the shelters for children and for mothers, for example, or families. And then, of course, yes, many of them get very aggressive because we want them to go back. Of course, that becomes a problem, or when we want to repatriate them. That's another issue as well.
Secretary Bárcena, let me ask you how you're viewing the current immigration debate in the U.S., because right now, the man who could become the nominee for the Republican Party, former President Donald Trump, has talked about cracking down on immigration and on deporting more people. And the conversation right now is around tightening access and asylum restrictions. How do you view that conversation? How do Mexicans view that conversation?
Well, I have to tell you that I think we have to change the narrative, because at the end of the day, Mexico and the U.S. are neighbors. We are our proximities there. We are the first trading partner of the U.S. today, $163 billion a year, which is $2 million per minute.
This is where a lot of trucks are made,
the trading between U.S. and Mexico. The major part of this...
I always find it funny when people with Toyota trucks are like, built in Texas. It's made in Mexico, dude. All the parts are made in Mexico. It's assembled in Mexico. Everything for like except for like
components, by the way. We're talking about
what is it, like the
40% of the exports of Mexico
the Tundra
are U.S. components that come in and out. So if the borders are closed, as it happened in December, the damage is not only for Mexico, it's going to be also for the U.S. So this is why we believe that we have to partner. U.S. and Mexico agree on how do we want to deal with migration, which is not coming from Mexico that much, is coming from the region, from the southern part of Mexico. So of course I understand the narrative that is, it's a narrative that is very negative, because also it's like the Mexicans are the bad guys that are bringing and contaminating the blood of the Americans. Come on, give me a break. The Mexican migrants in the US are contributing to the economy big time. They are providing
Yeah, it's always the perception that it's Mexicans that are coming in, when in reality it's people that are coming from all over South America, from wherever they can immigrate from. If they can fly into Mexico and then cross into the United States illegally, it's a lot easier to do that than to try to go through the legal means of the way that you should be getting into the United States. There was a video from I think it was Channel 5 Andrew Callahan. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, the border crisis in Arizona. This video is actually really good.
Hola,
highly
mi nombre es
recommend
Andrew
it.
Callahan y estás mirando Canal 5. Hoy estamos en la frontera, en una ciudad que se llama Gringo Pass, muy cerca a Mexico.
He is
I'm a gringo
gringo
myself, trying to pass the time and figure out what the heck's going on. I've been
But
hearing
he used to do all gas, no brakes until that went south, and then he basically in this video he goes to the border and goes through and he interviews people that are at the detention camps. And he sees that he interviews a couple people, and they describe to him what's going on. And basically, as soon as they get to the border, they're dropping all their IDs, they're dropping everything because they're crossing illegally. And if you come over and you have some sort of identification that's going to tell them as to where you belong, as to where you came from, then they're going to try and send you back there. If you don't, then it's all question marks, right? The other thing the other thing he's doing is he posted a video recently. I don't know if it's on here, but it might have been a short. But basically, he's going to cross into the United States illegally. He's going to meet with coyotes, and I don't know if the video got taken down or if it got posted yet or not. But yeah, pretty crazy stuff that he's doing.
$2 billion a year of taxes. and the salaries. Only 20% of the salaries of the Mexicans in the U.S. are coming to our country. We're talking about $65 billion. That's 20% of the salaries. So that means that 80% is staying in the economy of the U.S.
Madam Secretary, if I may, let me ask you about the other aspects of this relationship, though, because the senior official I spoke with today stressed exactly that it is a multifaceted partnership between U.S. and Mexico. He said in part that it's based on security and the economic and migration cooperation, also to combat trafficking and organized crime, and also what he called the scourge of fentanyl. And on that point, I need to ask you, because we know most of the precursors in fentanyl are produced in China, but Mexico has become a major transit and production hub, and that is fueling the opioid crisis here in the United States, where tens of thousands of people have died in the last year. What more can your government do to address that?
What we are doing is we are controlling the coming in of the precursors of fentanyl from China, and we have a system that we are controlling the entrance of these precursors, because many of these precursors of fentanyl are legal.
Come on. We both know who's making the fentanyl, but
by the way,
sure, it's coming in from China. Okay, right.
And the other thing is we have to work on the addiction. We don't have that much consumption of fentanyl in Mexico.
Lady, we don't care about addiction. As a matter of fact, we make the problems and then we sell the cure in the United States. So, yeah, I mean, I already know for a fact that, you know, guns go into Mexico and drugs come out. That's the way it works, right?
The fentanyl that goes into the U.S. is basically brought in by the Americans in themselves.
That it is.
We have closed down laboratories. We're doing a lot of work in enforcing and supervision of the borders.
That is the Mexican Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Alicia Bárcena, joining us tonight. Madam Secretary, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Great pleasure.
Anyways, that was, I don't know what that was. All right, so that's the basis of our little civil war that got going on here. I don't think there's going to be any crazy stuff happening. When it breaks down to it, I mean, what's Jared going to do with his F-150 when he's got to pay $20 a gallon for gas? He's going to pee his pants and then, you know, say, "Oh man, yes sir, right back to work, sir, of course." That's all that's going to happen. Yeah, it ain't nothing. There's nothing outside of that. But yeah, it's true. And they live and work here. Yes, exactly. All right. So yeah, again, I'm waiting for this guy to drop that crazy video about him illegally crossing into the United States. He posted a trailer of it, which is now gone. I don't know where that is. Channel 5 clips, maybe? No. It ain't on there either. I guess he deleted it. Maybe it's on his Patreon. It probably is. I'm not going to post Patreon stuff. You got to pay for that. All right. So moving over to the Middle East, which I generally cover. So this is okay. Stay with me here. This guy's really good. I love this guy.
Of what's going on with shipping, 2 U.S. flagged ships of Maersk Lines Limited are targeted and attacked by the Houthi in the Gulf of Aden. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to today's episode. So this guy, apparently he used to be, he's been in the shipping business or whatever parts of it forever. But he's also very familiar with all like the maritime stuff. Today we witnessed a direct attack on U.S. flagged vessels attempting to sail from the Gulf of Oman through the Gulf of Aden, through the Bab el-Mandab, into the Red Sea. These 2 ships are operated by Maersk Lines Limited. This is the American subsidiary of Maersk Lines in Denmark. We're going to talk about this and some issues associated with this attack and what is going on board U.S. vessels right now. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. So the video you're seeing here is from a sister ship of the ships involved in the incident. This is from Brian Boyle's channel. Great channel. I'll have the link in the show notes. if you want to see what life is like on board a ship. But this is the story
Is this
from
what it's like to be on a
Mike
cruise?
Schuller
Oh, no, my
over
phone.
at GCAP.
My mouse stopped
today.
working. Hold on.
Danish shipping giant AP Moller confirmed in an incident involving two of its U.S. flag vessels, the Maersk Detroit and
the most
Maersk
bootleg
Chesapeake.
setup over
Two
here.
ships
Oh,
were part of
shit.
a scheduled U.S. Navy quote-unquote accompaniment for a northbound transit of the Bab el-Mandeb today when they were reported
Can I type?
seeing explosions close
Yeah, I
by.
can type.
Story goes on, the United Kingdom's Maritime Trade Operations Office, which does not identify vessels in its alert, said it received a report from the master of a commercial vessel reporting an explosion 100 meters off the starboard side while approximately 50 miles south of Al Mukia, Yemen. The Maersk Detroit and Maersk Chesapeake are operated by Maersk Lines Limited, Maersk U.S. flag subsidiary. Both are enrolled in the U.S. Maritime...
So there's another video. Damn it, I keep talking about different videos while I'm watching one video. But there was one from AI Telly that I watched the other day, and yeah, they showed how how they're doing the actual attacks. Not that video. That one was really dumb.
This
but
is
they
a small
showed.
and dangerous passage in the Red Sea towards the Suez
Can
Canal.
I pause this? Thank you. But yeah, he kind of goes over what the distance is of the attacks, how far away they generally are whenever they launch their rockets, and what kind of rockets that they're using, and the capabilities of the different rockets that they have. Very informative. That's AI Telly. Pretty cool stuff.
Administration's Maritime Security Program and the Voluntary Intermodal Shipping Agreement. The statement from United States Central Command said this: on January 24th at approximately 2 p.m. Sana'a time, Iranian-backed Houthi terrorists fired 3 anti-ship ballistic missiles from Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen toward the U.S. flag-owned and operated container ship MV Maersk Detroit, transiting the Gulf of Aden. One missile impacted in the sea. The 2 other missiles were successfully engaged and shot down by the USS Gravely, DDG-107.
So that's what I've been saying this whole time, is that yeah, you have your Navy ships out there that can shoot down these missiles, but what are you going to do when they shoot a volley of missiles, basically, at one of these ships, or if not at one of these ships, at the Navy themselves, when you only have so many ships out there to defend that? Something's going to end up getting through, and I think that's what happened
There
here.
were no reported injuries or damage to the ship. Maersk went on to say that the cargo belonged to the U.S. Department of Defense, U.S. Department of State, USAID, and other U.S. government agencies, and is therefore afforded the
DoD
protection
cargo,
of the U.S. Navy for passage. Maersk Lines Limited went on to say, the safety of our crews are of utmost importance. We are developing network contingencies that will keep us informed. So let's talk about this and what exactly was happening and transpiring here. Because while we got information from Maersk Lines Limited, we got information from U.S. Central Command, we didn't get all of the information. I'm going to tell you that right now. Because my channel affords me the ability to talk directly to mariners who are either out there or sailing in and around the area.
Also, he
and
has
my
connections.
experience of having been a merchant mariner, having sailed for the Merchant Marine, and attending one of the 6 state maritime academies, really gives me the opportunity to talk to mariners on a case-by-case basis. So let's go over a couple of things first. Ships are being attacked, and while no ship has been sunk and no crew member has been killed or wounded, that does not minimize the danger involved. So this image, which was put together by H.I. Sutton over at Covert Shores, is a still of the attack on motor vessel Zagraphia. Zagraphia was a U.S.-owned but Marshall Island-flagged bulk carrier. And here you can see the moment that what looks like an Iranian Fatah 313 or an Asaf missile shot by the Houthis, not Iranian, it's not Iran that was shooting this, it was shot by the Houthi. But here you can see that missile coming down and hitting the number 2 hatch. Here you see the moment of the explosion. Now, I will say that explosion does not appear to be the warhead detonating. If you look at a Fatah 313, it can carry a warhead up to 800 pounds. This looks more like the fuel from the missile exploding vice the actual missile itself.
What's crazy to me is that's an 800-pound warhead that he says. The ones that they're dropping on buildings in Gaza are 2,000 pounds.
Detonating. This is the ship, came into the Suez shipyard just the other day, so we have images of it. The missile came in here through the number 2 hatch. So this is a big, huge bulk carrier. It was sailing from Vietnam to Europe, and you'll notice it's in a light condition. It's empty. These big hatches, this is number 1 hold, this is number 2 hold, carry grain, rice, whatever you need in there, or whatever needs to be carried. So the missile came down here at about a 40.
A lot of these companies will hire mercs in that area lately. There's a lot of PMCs that are going back and forth. I think he's going to go over that. Attacking a ship isn't as simple as it was in the day. Ships are owned by different companies and run by different nationalities. Yeah.
45-degree angle. And here from the other side, you can see how light the vessel is. We believe the
I don't know if this is the ship that actually got hit or not.
Came out this
That's
side.
a big hole.
You can see how the metal is peeled out here off the port side, pretty low.
I don't know if he's talking about the actual ship that got hit or he's just using this as an example.
On the vessel.
Yeah, one ship did get hit.
I think
it was yesterday or the day before.
Fortunate that we have not seen a vessel hit to a sufficient degree to catch fire and be lost, or for any of the crews to be killed or wounded, which is a significant element. The other element you have here is how Operation Prosperity Guardian is operating. The U.S. Navy, along
Not
with the
very
British
well.
Navy, the Royal Navy, are using their warships, roughly about 4 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and 1 Type 45 class destroyer of the Royal Navy, to provide safeguard against missiles and drones being launched, which means that you are basically putting these ships along the coast of Yemen, between Yemen and the main shipping channel. And understand that area.
So you got like 5 ships covering basically the coast of California, the size of it, right?
Has increased. The initial shipping target area was down here, the very southern end of the Red Sea, but now is extended out into the Gulf of Aden. And while many ships have diverted, at least 30% of all ships normally sailing through here have diverted, and 50% of the tonnage has diverted, the large container liners. Not all container liners are diverted. These are the tracks of 7 ships of CMA CGM line. This is the national shipping line of France. And the French have been providing direct escort for their vessels. This is an image
covering their own
of a
guys.
French frigate escorting 2 such ships. Up forward is a CMA CGM ship, and then aft is an APL. This is a subsidiary of CMA CGM. And the reason they...
That's why I think France is not part of the Operation Prosperity Guardian. They were like, fuck y'all, we'll just do it ourselves.
Can do direct escorts is the French frigate here provides point defense. In the distance is the U.S. Navy destroyers and the Royal Navy destroyer providing that protection. U.S. ships sailing through the area, and we've seen this happen before, the January 9th attack, where 4 U.S. ships were coming southbound in the southbound from Suez. They were coming through the Red Sea, and we have that big, huge, massive attack that stages the 22 missiles and drones that were shot. Those ships were not directly escorted. They were screened by the U.S. Navy and screened very well. But there was not a ship riding shotgun on them, at least not a U.S. Navy ship riding shotgun on them. The attack that took place today on Maersk Detroit and Maersk Chesapeake, while they...
So last week he covered that attack with like the 22 drones and all that stuff. And he said that he got notifications and he got messages from the people that were there. And he said it was just a complete war zone. They didn't know if they were going to die or like what was happening, basically. But thankfully, they made it out. The Navy was able to shoot down all the drones and all of the missiles that were sent.
They were not escorted directly by a U.S. Navy vessel. There was no U.S. Navy vessel alongside them. And again, you don't always need that. There could be air cover provided by FA-18s off the USS Eisenhower. There could be drones. There could be Air Force aircraft staging from an airbase nearby. But there was not a direct escort of the ships going by. And understand, the attack on Maersk Detroit and Maersk Chesapeake was sufficient enough that the crews were sent down into what's called the Citadel. This is an area of the ship deep in the interior of the vessel, so that if they get hit by a missile or a bomb, that they're shielded from the explosion, because right now the big danger is getting wounded by these explosions. They're down there. Now, if the ship sinks, it's a whole problem. You got to get out. But they're down there, and this explosions was enough, and the near misses were enough to lead these two ships being forced to return. So this is marine traffic, and I'm going to give you a couple of caveats here on marine traffic. A lot of the images you're seeing here these are all just U.S. flag ships. A lot of them are very dated because the U.S. flag ships have turned off their AIS. So let me make a couple of points here. Ocean Jazz. This is Ocean Jazz. It was the subject of an attack day before yesterday. Ocean Jazz was sailing southbound when it was attacked. Now, the U.S. came out and said the Ocean Jazz was not attacked. It was. It was the subject of an attack. It was not physically attacked in that missiles exploded close by, but
just missiles were shot at it, just because it didn't get hit. Like, yeah, it wasn't attacked, sure.
Was targeted by the Houthi. Here is Maersk Detroit.
It's like when somebody's like, trying to flick near your ear, but they're not doing it. Like, they didn't flick your ear.
Here is Maersk Chesapeake. Both those vessels were waiting out here at the meeting point, and this is where those embarked crews come on board. Maersk Detroit and Chesapeake were told to hang here and wait, and then they were ordered to go ahead and sail through. And what we heard come in was the report of an attack. This is from the United Kingdom's MTO. They received a report of an incident 50 nautical miles south of Al Malka, Yemen. Master reports an explosion approximately 100 meters from the vessel on its starboard side, exactly what we heard reported by Maersk Detroit. Vessel and crew are safe, no injuries or damage reported. Vessels are advised to transit with caution, report any suspicious activity. So the ships got to this point right here, and then they were forced to turn around. So, and this point is the narrowest when you come in here past the island of Purim and into this area. This was the area of a lot of attacks we saw recently. And so it looks like Maersk Detroit, Maersk Chesapeake were right in that area when they were told to turn back. I want to talk about another issue here that's equally important.
Hold on, before you get to that, it's extremely convenient how we have a multinational base in Djibouti. Not only that, when he was showing all these other locations where U.S. vessels are, those are all
like
United
Detroit,
States aligned
were
Arab countries.
Right in that area when they were told to turn back. I want to talk about another issue here that's equally important about this. U.S. vessels are being specifically targeted, so the Houthi are ratcheting up that. There are reports over and over again about crews getting paid extra money for sailing through. Showed you reports all on GCAP.
I don't know if that's the right term. I don't know if I should be saying Arab countries.
Foreign crews getting money, Danish crews getting double wages. Who's not getting paid right now, war bonuses or war zone pay or danger pay, whatever you want to call it, is U.S. crews. They're not getting paid this. Let me be clear about something. If the Houthi fired at commercial airliners overhead, that would be
it would be huge.
Story number one. It would displace everything else in the news. However, shooting at
if they shot like a AA cannon or like a SAM, like at an airplane, even if it didn't hit it, that would be global news.
U.S. flagships gets almost no attention whatsoever, and the crews on these ships are doing their job, and they're not being paid by the companies, and it's the companies that aren't doing that. Understand, the unions are going to bat for them. This is one of the reasons why there are maritime unions, because mariners.
So they're not even giving hazard pay
consistently. And right now, I know for a fact that the unions are talking to Maersk Lines Limited about this. Now, Maersk Lines Limited's retort to this is that we're operating on thin margins. We don't have the money, and this is not our war. You're signed on to sail through this area, and therefore you will sign on. Now, let me be clear. If Maersk Lines starts to, threaten their crew members with black marks or blacklisting them if they walk off because they're not getting paid, that's going to be a problem. There's going to be a huge problem right there. Because, number one, you cannot ask mariners to sail into war zones of danger if they're not being provided with enough protection. Understand, these ships have private security detachments on board. They don't even have U.S. Marines. Story a couple of months ago about putting U.S. Marines on board foreign flag tankers sailing through the Straits of Hormuz for companies like BP and Chevron for fear that their tankers were going to get grabbed by the Iranians. So the U.S.
Hey, wait a minute. I thought the U.S. military wasn't for hire.
Marines practice the Bataan amphibious group, which
Maybe I misheard that.
is up in the Med right now, trained to break their Marines up into small detachments, put them on ships to provide security. We're not doing that right now. Now, understand, we did that during the Iraq War in 2003. We activated the 92nd Infantry Brigade out of Puerto Rico, National Guard, broke them up into 13-person detachments, Operation Guardian Mariner, and we put security detachments on them, along with later on Marines and elements of the fleet anti-terrorism security teams. We're not doing that right now. So right now, these companies are hiring private security guards to defend themselves against helicopter, small boat, and drone attacks. That does nothing to protect them against ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. That's what the Navy's there for. But the fact that they can't get a destroyer running roughshod on them, hurting them, is a problem. And let me be clear, this is not on the U.S. Navy. I am not picking on the Navy here. The Navy is doing stellar work. Every mariner I talk to says that
when he says he's not picking on the Navy, he means he's not picking on the people that work for the Navy, not necessarily like the top brass.
This over and over again, and I heard it again from the attack on these ships. Hey, the Navy saved our ass.
Yeah.
So kudos, bravo Zulu to the U.S. Navy, to Vice Admiral Brad Cooper, the Fifth Fleet, the Combined Maritime Force, Operation Prosperity Guardian. You are doing a stellar, bang-up job. Same thing with the drone operators out of Djibouti and whatever Air Force assets are in theater there, along with the crews on USS Eisenhower, the F-18s, and all the support crews on there. You're doing a great job. What I'm talking about here is we don't have the assets. We have fundamentally screwed ourselves over the past 20 years. The French, the Italians have these frigates. They're great. You want a frigate riding roughshod.
That's the other thing I like about this guy.
Because we built littoral combat ships.
Really
which built
telling you
combat
what's
in the
up.
littoral. Well, guess what? This right here, this is the friggin' littoral. They were designed to deal with groups like the Houthi, not a peer-to-peer threat like the Chinese. But guess what? Littoral combat ships don't work. They don't work well, let's put it that way. I think there's a lot of utility in littoral combat ships. I think we should make them work. I don't think we should be scrapping them 8 years after they're built. I think that's a fundamental issue because it's going to be till 2030 that we see the first Constellation class come in. The other issue here that I have a huge amount of problems with is why is the Maritime
7 years,
Administration
right?
not going to bat for these ships and the crews? The U.S. Maritime
That's
Administration
another issue.
is supposed to be the advocate for the U.S. Merchant Marine. They should be in there brokering whatever's going on between the union, the shipping company, and those crews. They should be in there full front.
Okay, well, I understand his frustration with the Navy, the top brass, everybody that's involved. There's a simple solution here.
They should be in there talking to the Navy to ensure there's
It's an extremely
adequate
simple
protection
solution here
for these ships. And I know the Navy's trying to provide whatever protection they can. And when I say the Navy, I'm not talking about Fifth Fleet. I'm not talking about the destroyers out there that are doing great jobs. I'm talking about back in D.C. at the Pentagon, at Central Command, at the Joint Chiefs of Staff level, and in the friggin' White House talking about this, because that's who needs to be talked to. Why are we not providing protection? You're talking about a handful of destroyers. Handful, 4 maybe.
I mean, as we're seeing right now, the only solution that we've come up with is to bomb Yemen, which they've been bombed for like the last 9 years by Saudi Arabia. So they see it as no different. That's why they're just kind of like, hey, we've been bombed already. What are you doing? Like, we've been in an abusive relationship. You're just hitting us more. What's going on? You're not really doing anything. So that's a non-solution. It might look good to people back in the United States, but it's a total non-solution. He's going to go through. I believe he's going to go through the
carrying
motions.
that load along with allied ships. There needs to be more. Understand, the Houthi have done something unheard of. They have interdicted 11% of the world trade, and they're
Yeah, so his average Ameribrain here, rather than coming up with a diplomatic solution, his solution is more defense, I guess.
forcing it to go around Africa. You've got to go back to the world wars to find a naval power that emerges that makes trade lanes bend and interdict supplies. That's what the Houthi have done. And they're doing it with Iranian hand-me-down missiles duct taped together, cobbled together, and being launched and hitting. And the only thing that's been the saving grace here is that the missiles are so crappy that they don't blow up like they're supposed to. Understand, this will not last long, because what's going to begin to happen is once there's a realization that the Houthi are either not hitting or they're not damaging the ships enough, then you'll see a resumption of trade back through this area, which means the Houthi will ramp it up again. And they will try to sink and kill crew members on board. Understand, I don't think they're doing this consciously right now. Some people are saying, well, the Houthi are not trying to hurt anybody. No, that's not what they're doing. It's just the missiles aren't that great.
The missiles suck.
If they see the potential here, then they will do it. Understand, this is a targeted
because
attack.
Sal can say the missiles suck, but according to AI Telly, the missiles aren't that bad. At least not the way that Sal's painting it. This is why I try to source information from multiple sources, whether they're right wing or left wing or seemingly just liberal sources, like Sal might be.
Attack against the United States of America. That's what they did when they targeted U.S. ships. This led to our entry into World War friggin' I. This is the whole reason we got in, is because they were targeting U.S. flag vessels. We saw it on January 9th. We saw it again with the Ocean Jazz, and now we're seeing it again with the attack on Maersk Chesapeake and Maersk Detroit. And we need to react to that. Let me be clear here. The answer isn't just bomb the Houthi more. It's not land Marines into Yemen, because that is a whole mess of an issue. You've got to diffuse this issue. That means diplomacy, that means there's statecraft, but it also means we have to make it so that the ships sailing through are not being subjected to attack. And that means more defense when it comes to
more defense,
vessels.
okay.
It is very dangerous to get sucked into one of these conflicts, and all of a sudden it becomes a bigger conflict, because now you're going to go ashore.
More defense means more budget. You got to have more ships out there. You got to have more missiles. You have to have more anti-missile
As I said in the video
armaments.
not too long ago, when I compared what the Houthi are doing to what we did in the first Barbary War.
It's an expense. I mean,
Understand,
can you
the way
afford
we
it?
ended
Sure.
The first Barbary War was by paying off the Tripolitans.
How
The
does
way
it
we
look
ended
to the
second
people
Barbary War
that are gonna
was
vote
by
this year?
use of overwhelming force against them, with not just us, but the British and the French. And eventually what really ended it was the French taking over Algiers. That's what eventually ended it. And I'm not advocating that at all, but you have to understand, you have to go at this with more than just one avenue of attack. You can't just be using the military hammer. You have to be using diplomacy. You have to be looking at what you can do behind the
Yes,
scenes. I
diplomacy.
think the British were trying to negotiate with the Iranians, try to get the Iranians to make movements against the Houthi. You just saw a thing
To
come
make
out
movements
from the State
against
Department
the-
saying maybe the Chinese can use movement for this. I'm not sure any of those will work in
This
any
is
way.
frustrating.
What I do know is we waited too long. We allowed the Houthi to gain momentum, and we haven't been able to squelch this.
Okay.
And the problem is, you can bomb the Houthi until the end of time, because
I love his information. He's extremely
You're not gonna
informative
eliminate
majority
them
of the time.
with air power. You're just not.
Don't agree with his
And while
analysis.
air power has its huge advocates, and I hear them all the time,
Missiles become expensive, but their justification is a $2 million missile is worth protecting a $300 million ship shipping load, which is why lasers are becoming a thing. I was told lasers are specifically for just drones. A laser V drone costs $5 per bust. But yeah, the range is kind of short. So yeah, I mean, we can build up. We can, let's build this whole imaginary military and say they take up every square inch of the ocean out there, right? Cool. You can disrupt the missile. Yeah. You can disrupt the navigation and all that. You could do that. So you could do that. You could have missiles up the ass and have all this stuff. Or here's a pretty easy solution. Ceasefire now, because what we do know is 5-day ceasefire. And then what happened during the 5-day ceasefire? I probably have to Google 5-day ceasefire. Houthi, Hezbollah. Stop. Okay. Damn it! I need to find. I need to find the specific article. Go back in time to when the ceasefire stopped. But yeah, during that time that the ceasefire did occur, not only did Yemen stop bombing ships in that period of the 5-day ceasefire, Hezbollah stopped bombing northern Israel. That stopped because of the ceasefire. And not only that, what is it, Al-Assad base, base in Iraq, that stopped being bombed by the IRI. As you know, you're seeing here, personnel attacked, injured during the attack. That stopped as well. So yeah, you can build up all this naval, armaments and have crazy anti-missile stuff going on. You could do the whole laser light show, or you could just have a ceasefire and it all ends. It all stops. But the only thing that's happening right now is you're giving massive credit to the capabilities of Yemen and Ansar Allah, of the Houthi. And you're building them up to a name that they probably never expected to be. Once this is over, they're going to be like, oh yeah, we took on the United States and we didn't feel a thing. That's really what's going to happen. And then you put them back on the terrorist list, and so now you have another name that's going to stick out in the minds of Americans that watch the news, right? And they're going to say, "Oh, this is another bad guy that's out there." You just gave them basically street cred, kind of, even with all the bombing, even with all the stuff that they've been doing for the last week and a half or however long it's been. You're solidifying their credit as to how they stand.
On my Twitter and my email. This is not what's going to be the issue here. But U.S. vessels.
He's going to wrap it up. Yeah, U.S. crews. They're being attacked. I agree that they shouldn't be attacked. I agree that there's innocent sailors. I agree that the people that are sailing these vessels and that are part of the crew have nothing to do with what's going on. But we already know what the solution is for this to stop happening. So make it stop. That's it.
We're subjected to it.
Also, pay your fucking sailors, man. Like, pay. You're not giving them hazard pay? Like, what the hell? What? Like, he said that they have unions and stuff, but what the? Like, what? Like, that makes it sound like to me that the other sailors from other countries or that are going through they are getting hazard pay. And the other thing that we've seen is a massive drop in ships that are going through through the Red Sea. So yeah, okay, they instead of giving them hazard pay, they go the long way around Africa, but they're safe, right? The sailors are safe, the crew is safe, but we're making these guys go through there. And we're not giving them any extra money for it? Come on.
And the fact that we're treating them...
Also, why is that not in the news at all? Like, none of this is in the news.
Poorly. And I mean poorly by not providing them direct escort, by sending them into areas without secure communication. Did a whole video talking about the fact that there's no secure comms on the vessel. And once again, we sent crews into this area without secure comms.
He's mad.
How is
and he's
there not
mad
a
at the
Navy
right people
on board there with secure comms? How is there not Marines on board there with 50
he doesn't
caliber
necessarily
machine
have the right
guns and
solution.
Stinger missiles to shoot down drones or any small craft that comes on board? Yeah, I know they can't shoot down anti-ship cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. That's what the Navy destroyers and aircraft are there for. But you can provide that defense that Maersk Hangzhou, one of the main Maersk Line's vessels, encountered back on New Year's. This is what we're not doing, and we need to do it. And I know I'm on my soapbox again today, and I said I wasn't going to do it, but this just
stay mad, bro.
pisses
Stay
me
mad.
off.
If you
And
stay
I'm
mad,
telling you,
you don't have to get
there
mad.
are a lot of people who are doing this wrong. Unions, shipping companies, MARAD, you got to get out and talk about this. This needs to be discussed. We need to be shouting this from the rooftop, and we're not. And instead, what we're doing is we're thinking everything is fine, everything is good. I'm not seeing an increase in my costs right now because, in truth, what's going to
that's
hit
definitely
us is
coming.
on the
By the way,
it's just a matter
like
of time
everybody's
before
complaining about 100%, 200%
It's
increase in their burgers and whatnot. Dude, I went to fucking Wendy's today, and my meal was $12 for one meal.
I know I said I wasn't going to do it. But
Like, do you want fries with that and a Coke? Is $12 now.
and did it again. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I sure the heck didn't. If you did, hey, how about subscribing to the channel?
Definitely check this out. I watch this guy as often as he posts. I love his videos. He's really good. Yeah. All right. So, moving on closely, I think the IDF attacked Columbia
here
students.
on democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Students at Columbia University here.
This is something that has not been in like ABC, NBC, CBS news at all from what I've seen.
Held an emergency protest Wednesday over the school's response to an attack on members of Columbia University apartheid divest at a rally on campus last Friday. Police are now investigating how pro-Palestinian students were sprayed with a hazardous, foul-smelling chemical at Friday's protest, including members of Students for Justice in Palestine, Jewish Voice for Peace, and Jews for Ceasefire. 8 students were reportedly hospitalized or seeking medical attention. Organizers allege the attack was carried out by 2 students who are former members of the Israeli military, the IDF.
The IDF,
using a chemical weapon known as skunk that soldiers also deploy on Palestinians. A Palestinian-American student named Layla described the attack.
There are so many things that the United States police just bring back from the IDF. I'm kind of not surprised to see this. But there's also something known as the Palestinian chair, which if you're not familiar with that, you can type that into Google, Palestinian chair. It seems like there's a lot of these tactics that are developed by the IDF, and somehow they are really good at using them for some reason.
Says has left her traumatized in an interview with the podcast The Robust Opposition.
I remember just smelling this smell in the air, and it was just atrocious. I was like, oh my gosh, like it smells like somebody died. Like, what is this smell? And then at first I was like, okay, maybe I stepped in some dog poop. Like, maybe I'm just tired.
Dog poop.
What? I tried to like kind of ignore it for a little bit.
It was COVID.
But then after the protest, when the protest was done, I just noticed how bad I felt. I felt so sick. I felt fatigued. I was nauseous. I had a really bad headache. And I was like, something is going on here. I'm not sure what, but something is going on here. And then I was getting texts and calls from my friends, and they were like, did you smell that smell? Or my friend was like, oh my gosh, I threw up like 3 times. Like, I don't know what is wrong with me. So when this is used on Palestinians in the West Bank, like for example, it's been used on peaceful protesters there. It's been used on shopkeepers and merchants. So like if a merchant gets their produce sprayed with skunk, they have to throw it all out just because of how bad it stinks. It felt like for a while, like the university like didn't believe us. Like I told them about it, and it's like my concerns weren't really being taken seriously. And it wasn't until students started posting photos of themselves being hospitalized and tagging the university, being like at Columbia, like like they started taking it seriously.
That's Palestinian-American Columbia University student Layla describing Friday's attack on her, as well as other students who were part of a protest. No arrests have been made yet, but the school now says it's banned the suspects from campus while law enforcement investigates. For more, we're joined by Mahmoud Mamdani, professor of government at Columbia University, who specializes in the study of colonialism. His books include Neither Settler Nor Native, The Making and Unmaking of Permanent Minorities. His recent interview with The Nation has headlined The Idea of the Nation State is Synonymous with Genocide. And we're joined by Catherine Franke, a Columbia Law School professor, member of the Center for Palestine Studies Executive Committee on the Board of Palestine Legal, helped write a new op-ed in the campus paper, the Columbia Spectator, headlined, "Faculty and Staff Pledge to Take Back Our University." We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Professor Franke, can you explain what happened, the skunking of the students sprayed with this chemical? Does the university know who these students were, where they came from, and have they been dealt with?
Well, good morning, Amy. So the students were protesting in the main quad of the university last Friday, and we've had a series of protests. Our students are outraged at what's going on in our name and with our tax dollars in Gaza. While they were protesting, and I will say peacefully, last Friday, as your recording of Layla's
there has to be video of this, right?
They all of a sudden smelled this horrible stench, and I've smelled skunk water when I've been in the West Bank at protests.
Really?
It is horrible. The students were able to do is examine video from that protest and identify, I think, 3 older students. Columbia has a program with a graduate relationship with older students from other countries, including Israel. And it's something that many of us were concerned about because so many of those Israeli students who then come to the Columbia campus are coming right out of their military service. And they've been known to harass Palestinian and other students on our campus, and it's something the university has not taken seriously in the past. But we've never seen anything like this.
So it's like a repeat offender kind of thing. These guys are just hanging out there.
3 of these exchange students, basically, from Israel who had just come out of military service, who were spraying the pro-Palestinian students with this skunk water. And they were disguised in keffiyeh so that they could mix in with the students who were demanding that the university divest from companies that are supporting the occupation and the war, and were protesting and demanding a ceasefire. We know who they were. The university waited 3 or 4 days to actually even say anything about it. They have not reached out to the students who were sick, as you noted, some of whom are still in the hospital.
Sick?
I spoke to one student
last night. When you say sick, you mean hospitalized, right?
One of them on your show this morning, and he was so mentally and physically disabled from this attack that he said, "I haven't left my dorm room in a week." So our students are in terrible distress about this, both those who were sprayed and those who weren't. There was another protest yesterday, and the students were actually quite afraid to come back onto the campus.
Is it true that you've seen these students, the former IDF students, on campus? And what is the administration saying about that since the attack?
Well, the university says that they have banned the 3 identified students from the campus, but I was told that one of them was there yesterday. Other students saw him. I don't know that for sure, but several students said they saw one of them. We have a fairly porous campus. To ban them from campus is something that they'd have to volunteer to comply with, except when there is a demonstration. When they've started locking the campus down in the last several months with gates, and you have to have your ID just get scanned to enter the campus. And then there's a wall of NYPD. When I went to class yesterday, there were hundreds of NYPD officers in uniform lining our campus. So the university's response has not been compassion, support for the students who were attacked. Instead, it's been a militarization of our own campus.
That's all we know to do.
On our
escalation and militarization, man.
Peacefully, now turning to the excuse of this attack from those who support the Israeli government and the violence that's being meted out towards Gazans as a kind of pretext to clamp down even further on peaceful protest by our other students.
Mahmoud Mamdani, you've written about the situation in Gaza. You've spoken about it. There are now over 25,000 Palestinians who've been killed, over 11 1,000 of them children. The issue of hunger in Gaza is a very serious issue raised by the UN and medical groups. You have that situation there, and the solidarity expressed with the people in Palestine on college campuses. Can you talk about what's happening at Columbia and both staff, professors, students' feelings about whether they can express their views without being doxxed or attacked?
Thank you, Amy. The situation at Columbia has been developing. It's monitored by an administration which seemed to have very little idea about what to do. At the same time, it had certain assumptions. The assumption was that the main problem at Columbia is anti-Semitism.
It's sad how throughout our history, bad actors can rabble-rouse people based on ethnicity and nationality who are otherwise just normal people living their lives. Exactly. Like, they just...
And the administration
do whatever they want.
Everything to keep it in check and then to eradicate
and there's very little pushback.
When incidents like this, the chemical spraying, emerged, the administration's first response was kind of
I'm curious what this actually smells like because I have a weird story, but I remember being an early teens, I would say, and then playing with my friends in the neighborhood, and there was this old man that lived next to one of my friends, and he had the basketball goal. My friend did, but that old man just hated us. He was an old white dude, of course. We were young Mexican kids playing basketball or baseball or whatever. And I remember one day there was this super weird sour stench, and we couldn't figure out what it was, but it was the wind was going towards us, right? And it's all we could smell, and it just smelled really bad. I'm not making this up, by the way. But it was really weird. And then so we would usually ride our bikes around the neighborhood. So we just walked further down the street, and once we got past the old man's house, you couldn't smell it anymore. But once we went back to my friend's yard, and we were there, we would play football or basketball or whatever. It just smelled really, really bad. Maybe he was part of the idea. I don't know.
Give us the facts. Overall, it's been a very clumsy handling. Different parts of the administration have different and sometimes.
And then one time he put dog shit out, where we used to play baseball, and he probably killed someone. He had one of those huge satellite dish things on top of his house, the old outdated ones, you don't see them anymore. But it was gigantic. And this is just in a regular neighborhood in the city.
Conflicting initiatives. At the same time,
called the cops on us too.
Coherence, and the coherence is basically to shut things down and only to have an opening from the top. So, no question of freedom of expression from below. That's where we are now. Meanwhile, the community is convinced that the shots are being called by those who give the money.
So how are you organizing as a professor with other professors, with students?
Yeah, what are you guys doing?
I think the number of concerned professors is growing. We're all convinced that the initiative must remain with the students. They are in the front line. But also we're convinced that we should offer whatever guidance we can offer.
It's so fucked up that we're trying to protect our students and the teachers here, but it's them kind of just having to protect themselves. They said that there's a line of cops. I would assume the only thing the cops are there for is to make sure that no property gets destroyed, right? That's kind of the way it usually works. Everything else you have to work out amongst yourselves.
Meet and discuss. I personally have not been involved in face-to-face meetings much because of health issues, but I have been involved in meetings which are remote meetings. And it's changing every day, and it's developing.
Professor Franke, last semester, Columbia University, the new president at Columbia, suspended both SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine, as well as Jewish Voice for Peace, for holding a so-called unauthorized event, a walkout and art display in support of a ceasefire in Gaza. So what are these groups' status right now? And also, you yourself have long been involved with issues around Palestine. In fact, Israel deported you, and explain why. This was before October 7th.
Well, my circumstances are much less acute than the circumstances of our students right now. I've been part of the Barnard and Columbia community since the late 70s. I went to Barnard as an undergrad. And I've been at Columbia now as a professor for 25 years. Columbia's campus has always been a place where students have engaged the most critical issues of the day. When I was there in the late 70s, it was issues around feminism and pornography and sexual rights. And later there were things around the Iraq War and the invitation of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad to the campus. Students, faculty have used the campus as a palette for learning about difficult issues. That's what we do at universities for protesting or showing up for communities that are persecuted around the world. And what we've seen this administration do since October 8th is kind of go to war against our students.
Wow.
I have never seen the university disband student groups for peaceful protest. We have...
But just imagine how bad it would be under Trump.
Scores, 30, 40, 50 complaints that the university has filed against students for violations of the disciplinary code or for organizing protests based on their changing of the rules around how to have an event the night before the event so that the students don't even know that they're violating some new event rule.
The orange one, yeah, definitely fuck that guy.
The
He's a moron.
university said that SJP and JVP had to be suspended because they engaged in intimidating and threatening and anti-Semitic rhetoric. And then in private meetings with them, they said actually they didn't, but they won't retract that. So that defamation of our students remains in the public and in the media and in the eyes and ears of our alums and of other students, but they won't repudiate it. And so the students feel like they have nothing left that they can do except protest against the university at this point. But Professor Mamdani and I and other faculty have been spending an enormous amount of time protecting our students from the university itself. Barnard students are being prosecuted for their social media posts and for hanging Palestinian flags outside of...
I'm just going to say, this looks a lot cooler than the community college that I went to that was in the middle of a shopping center. Man, it must be awesome. But... yeah, also I was poor.
Their dorm rooms when New York City law specifically protects the hanging of flags outside of a dormitory. So it feels like we're under a kind of siege, too, at Columbia and at Barnard.
Professor Mamdani, before you were professor at Columbia, you were professor and director of the Center for African Studies at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. Tomorrow, the decision will come out of the International Court of Justice, an emergency decision on South Africa's case, genocide case against Israel. Your final comments.
ICJ.
Well, for those who read the South African application, it must be clear that its strong point was the content, the argument, the substance. The empirical material drew totally from UN sources and from no other source, really. So it was unimpeachable. The Israeli side, the Israeli lawyers, did not say anything, did not present any defense on whether a genocide is unfolding. What they did defend was that procedurally South Africa should not be the party making an application.
Well, Mahmoud Mamdani, we're going to continue this discussion and post it online at democracynow.org.
I'm online.
Mahmoud Mamdani,
Where is
professor
it?
of government at Columbia University, and Catherine Franke, Columbia Law School
website.
professor. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.
Damn, they cut her off fast. We never get the good stuff on the YouTubes. Okay, that was very interesting. Now, they alluded that they're doing something, or that they're investigating the two IDF guys that did that. I didn't hear the detail previously that they were dressed up, pretending like they were part of the protest in cafes. But that's... Imagine being IDF and then going, like, undercover like that, and, wearing things that you don't agree with or don't particularly like, just to injure some people. Yeah, what's the IDF been up to recently?
The war on Gaza has now been waged for over 100 days. The destruction is immense, along with the loss of life.
We have no place to go. My apartment is gone. I found nothing but these things in my...
This dude has a rolling pin, 2 pans, and a kettle. That's all he found from his apartment?
hands. I'm responsible for 7 people, and I have children.
Holy shit.
And we all live in a school. My children are sick. There are a lot of dead under the rubble.
And there are concerns that the Israeli military is moving to take permanent...
Look at this.
...control of areas along the border, establishing a so-called buffer zone. 1 kilometer wide and eventually running the entire...
A buffer zone is what they're doing right now. That's why they're doing demolitions. Not only were they doing demolitions in Gaza City, but they're doing them in Khan Yunis now. So they're trying to go all... Which, hold on, they're saying they're trying to do a buffer zone, but they have not really been in this area much. Sounds like a bunch of bullshit to me. Because this is a stronghold for the IQB. And not only that, they've just kind of split into here, but they're still getting murked all over the place, man.
Entire length of the 65-kilometer Gaza-Israel border. There's been no formal announcement, but the Israeli military has already destroyed...
Hold on, did you see that? Those are just the demolition sites. So, okay, so they were able to get into the corner. And then they were able to go over here. So, what buffer zone are you creating? Like, where is this? This is an imaginary buffer zone that they're creating in their head that, oh yeah, we're eventually going to do all of this. When? Like, when you completely eliminate Hamas, which has not happened at all. It's been 3 months. More than 3 months at this point. I guess this buffer zone will be done by like 2030, maybe?
Announcement, but the Israeli military has already destroyed nearly 1,100 buildings in the northern part of the Strip. A move it says is necessary to provide security to Israeli communities on the other side of the border.
We've been very clear
oh my God,
our opposition to the forced displacement of people. We've been very clear about maintaining, in effect, the territorial integrity of Gaza.
The Israeli leadership appears...
You know, I do agree. He looks visibly worse every time I see him. He looks like he's like did you ever see the Onion video of George Bush painting with every time he made a painting there was a dead Iraqi child that follows him around? That's exactly what's going to happen to this guy.
Of Gaza.
The Israeli leadership appears to be ignoring the U.S.
Like, you saw that video, right? You know what I'm talking about? Hold on. This is gonna be Anthony Blinken, the Onion, George Bush, Iraqi. Yeah, here we go.
Today, the Picasso-in-chief tweeted his latest picture, a turkey sandwich and glass of lemonade in front of the ghost of the Iraqi child that follows him everywhere. Rebecca Mira has been following the painting POTUS's flourishing art career. He's pretty good, Rebecca.
Yeah, well, Rachel, Bush doesn't claim to be a great artist, but as he put it, not bad for an old man, huh?
Not bad at all. He says he likes painting simple things he sees in everyday life, like his dogs, that dead Iraqi child, his bathroom.
Well, the first paintings we saw were of Bush in the shower. He has an eye for quiet, intimate moments. It's really a revealing glimpse into what Bush's day-to-day life is like now that he's out of the Oval Office.
Well, I personally like the way that he uses mirrors to create a picture within a picture.
He's got...
Now, okay, Biden's not going to be around long enough to enjoy this, but Blinken definitely will be.
a natural flair. His self-portraits really capture the former president's playful personality.
And you can see that Bush's art is improving over time if you take a look. At first, he could barely draw the Iraqi child's transparent hands, but now they look much more realistic.
Much more. You know, I'm not surprised that he's getting better. Bush practices constantly, sometimes turning out 40 to 50 paintings in a day.
And Laura Bush says he's more focused than ever, locks himself away for hours at a time, and won't talk to anyone while he's painting.
Yeah, he's even started painting in his sleep. You know, he said he doesn't remember doing that
He
one.
takes a painting lesson every week, too, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's right. You know, this new landscape has got to be my favorite.
Wow. Well, I think he did a pretty good job.
Yeah, it's Bush's view from his Crawford
That's,
Ranch. He says this is where he's most at peace.
Well, I certainly can't paint that well.
Abu
Thanks,
Ghraib?
Rebecca. Makes you wonder if history will look back on Bush as a politician or the next
Abu Ghraib.
Rembrandt.
Yeah.
Up next, a study found that drinking red wine
Stupid
once a
American
day
brain.
can help the body get hammered.
What's what? You gotta follow up on that story. Anyways,
they want to move their
back to the atrocities.
borders forward into Gaza, destroying the lives of the people of Gaza. And that is, of course, very dangerous. And it should not be accepted, and it should not be allowed. Add to that, another important factor, in my opinion, their talk about a buffer zone now is, in a way, a recognition of their failure.
The buffer zone could also be illegal
Dude, look
under
at all this
international
shit.
law.
What Israel is proposing, has been proposing, and is now perhaps opposing with a little.
Honestly, the best thing that could have happened was the two buildings collapsing.
Unlikely to be lawful.
The collapse
opposed by
shot.
the international community, and a way of occupying Gaza, whatever happens at the end of this conflict.
Israel
that
has
put
already
a
paved
small
the path of
pause
destruction
on
for
all
the
of
buffer
this
zone,
destruction that's
pushing
going on.
Palestinians into an even smaller piece of land. But if the zone is established, it gives no way for Palestinians to return to the part of Gaza where their homes once stood. Asad Beg, Al Jazeera.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news.
That's absolutely terrible news. I need to go use the bathroom. I still have a few more videos here. What do we got lined up? Yeah, IDF opens fire on aid distribution. We're sending a CIA director to go do hostage deal talks. I'm sure that'll go over well. And then why the pharmacy sucks. That'll probably be the last video. I'm going to leave you with Squirtle Sex for a couple minutes. I'll be right back. Squirtle Sex, 1 hour. Let's do that. You like Squirtle Sex? I like Squirtle Sex. Is it this one? I think it's this one. Yeah, here you go. Turn it down a little bit. Might be a little loud. I'll be right back. I'm back, bro. Don't go anywhere. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I am back though. I love Squirtle sex. Like, dude, just he's jamming. Okay, Squirtle sex, you've done your job. Okay, so yeah, now we're just opening fire on people. I don't know if I can show this or not. I'm just going to so they fired tank shells and live ammunition at people that were trying to get aid today. That's absolutely insane. And by the way, nobody is, well, many were killed, but not on screen. If anybody's on the screen, they're sleeping. No TOS. That's, I don't know if I can show blood. Oh yeah, see, he's alive. He's injured. Injured man. But yeah, so apparently the story is they've had trucks lined up at the border of Egypt going into Gaza, and people have been waiting to get aid, waiting to get food. Yeah, UN reports Israel's intense bombardment makes it nearly impossible. I think I'll do this. I'll just skip through. But yeah, this just horrible, horrible conditions of what they have them experiencing.
When we've moved into the north, of course, people up there are already desperate. People are starving in the north, and they are desperate for this aid, which makes it very difficult for us to run.
I guess he's with the UN.
In the north, what we've seen today is going to make it very difficult for the UN and humanitarian partners to get any aid into the north of Gaza, and people up there desperately need this aid.
The IDF says it's investigating the deadly attack. Don't worry, guys. We're on it. We caused the problem, but we're going to look into it. This just sounds like the evening news when the cops kill somebody, and then the cops come on there on the news to tell you everything's fine. Don't worry, we killed them on purpose, basically. So, more of the same type of bullshit that we've been going through. And I think that's why we see a lot of sympathy in the United States from people that aren't privileged, I'll say, because we understand what it's like to have family members taken away, or incarcerated, or unalived by the authorities. I think that's something that we sympathize with. Whether or not the United States as a whole, and I'm going to say United States as authority figures, saw that coming. I guess it doesn't matter right now because that's where we are. This whole 1033 program, the militarization of the police and the way that people are treated, we sympathize with this. Again, unless you live a very privileged life and you've never experienced anything like that, unless you've never been arrested, never had, been unable to pay rent because you got a ticket, that kind of stuff, then yeah, we relate to that. And for those that have relatives that are currently going through those situations, I'm sure they relate to that even more. But don't worry, guys. We're gonna fix this. We got a CIA director. He's going down there, gonna fix
The director
this.
of the CIA is reportedly being deployed to help with a deal to release Israeli hostages remaining in Gaza. A diplomat with knowledge of the matter confirmed to NBC News a meeting is set to take place this weekend. NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez is following the latest
good guys
developments from
going
Tel
out
Aviv
there.
for us. So, Raf, what do we know about this meeting and who would be involved?
So, Zinkley, CIA Director Bill Burns expected to head to Europe this weekend to meet with his Israeli counterpart, the head of the Mossad spy agency, as well as the Prime Minister of Qatar, who has been the lead mediator during this crisis. And the hope is that these meetings will build momentum towards a fresh deal between Israel and Hamas, leading to a ceasefire and the release of some or all of those remaining Israeli hostages. Now, the big sticking point here has been how long this ceasefire will last. Hamas has been saying they will not release any more hostages until the war ends. Israel has been saying the war will not end until Hamas is destroyed. So if there's going to be a deal...
Well, that's not going to happen. The second part. The first part of what he said, that has already been proposed a month ago. There was a 3-stage proposal by Hamas. And so recently there's actually been another proposal by, I believe it was Egypt and Qatar, that made a proposal with Hamas to Israel, and that might be what they're working on right now. But I think that was like a couple days ago. Yeah, they don't usually talk about this stuff on NBC, CBS, ABC.
Deal. It will be somewhere in between those two, potentially.
And he's very vague on his descriptions.
A long-term but not permanent ceasefire in return for the release of some or all of those hostages. But tensions running pretty high right now between Israel and Qatar. The Israeli Prime Minister caught on a recording being disparaging about the role Qatar is playing in the region. And the Qataris accusing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of politicizing this conflict, putting his own political needs ahead of the lives of Israeli hostages. A pretty serious accusation.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories.
Lester always pops up out of nowhere. But yeah, that's don't worry, guys. Help is on the way. We got the CIA going out there. It's
on the NBC News app.
It's not going to be like, United Fruit Company or anything like that, but it is what it is. Anyways, whoa, big scary terrorist. They really, what's going on here? Dude, they're really ramping it up with these video effects. Anyway, from the Hindustan Times, the IQB spokesperson claims that in the past week, they've eliminated 53 IDF. They sniped 9. They wounded dozens. I don't know if that's in addition to the 53. But yeah, it seems like, this whole elimination of Hamas and the IQB's not going very well. You could say, hey, this is not a reputable site. This is I believe this is an India-based publication. HT is. They're probably just going to show you a bunch of... oh, here you go. Okay, so these guys, during the past week, been able to completely destroy almost 70. Wow. Four houses were blown up, and 2 entrances to the tunnels and minefield were blown up among. So that's coming from the Al-Qassam brigades, which I would imagine the 4 houses that they're talking about would be the 21 or 24 IDF deaths that did occur. Oh, they shot down 2 more planes, and they seized 8 drones. Wow. And they got 2 suicide drones. Wow. So yeah, it's not looking good for the guys that have the upper hand here. But yeah, there's still 130 hostages. Now, let's look at the official IDF numbers to confirm this. Holy shit. Okay, that's that was from 4 days ago. They don't want to release any more numbers. You know, this was bad press back then. But hey, you know, any press is good press, unless you're Litwick here. It's not going to go good. All right. So, yeah, that's my coverage for Gaza. It's a complete atrocity as to what's going on. The treatment of Palestinians is terrible. The whole buffer zone thing is a bunch of bullshit. It's just an excuse to do demolitions on housings, and that's my conclusion on it all. I think it's terrible the way people are being treated. There are 2 million people in the Strip that are being pushed south, and just they're being pushed even further south now with the assault on Khan Yunis. It's awful. I don't know what we're doing by sending the CIA guy down there. You might as well dig up Kissinger and just throw him over there and, you know, see what he cooks up. Zombie Kissinger might be able to... Probably he would just get everybody murdered. That's all he would do. Everybody in the region. Yeah, let's not think about that anymore. Anyways, more doomer shit. Why does my pharmacy suck?
So I was 7 months pregnant with my daughter, Ella. I'd been having some blood pressure issues, and my managing staff was aware of this.